What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. If you're new here, welcome to the channel. I'm Joshua Hall. I've been living and traveling abroad for around a decade now. In this video, I'm going to share with you some general advice on how to maximize your Airbnb experience, because plenty of people have had those nightmare experiences and I don't want that for you. I'm also going to share with you the best alternative in my opinion, and I'm also going to share with you the best way to get a good deal on accommodation overseas, especially if you're staying in a place for more than a month or so. So with all that said, let's go ahead and get into it. But first, smash that like button. It costs you nothing, means the world to me, really helps me out with the algorithm, and I would truly appreciate it. Now let's go ahead and start with how to maximize your Airbnb experiences. First and foremost, I would not book an Airbnb long term without seeing it first. So in general, what I do if I'm going to a place for, let's just say, 3 months, I'm not going to book my Airbnb for 3 months, especially if it's a place I've never been before. I don't know if I'm going to like that city. Maybe I'll want to go to a different city after experiencing that city. So in general, I'll do 1 to 3 days or so, and I will let the host know in advance, hey, I'm going to check it out, and if I like it, I'm going to be booking for 1 month, 2 months, 3 months. And that's simply so that they give me a heads up if they get a booking before I make up my mind. And generally what they'll do is they'll say, hey, someone wants to book it for this time frame. Do you know if you're going to be staying or not? And if I don't have a chance to see it, I'll probably just tell them, no thanks. And obviously, this is going to solve probably 90% of the problems people have. Now, obviously, if you're going for more of a short-term vacation kind of thing, this may not be super applicable to you. So for those purposes, what you're going to want to do is you're probably going to want to be dealing with superhosts. You're probably also going to want to stay above about the 4.8, maybe 4.75 star range. And it's always good to have a guest favorite that has tons of reviews. Now, everyone knows the Airbnb review system is a little faulty. They can easily get your reviews removed and things of that nature. So you need to be aware of that. But in general, if most people are saying glowing things about their stay, it's probably a pretty great place. Now, next, you're going to want to make sure, first of all, it's actually located in the neighborhood that you want to be located in. Because I had this happen once where they say it's located in a certain neighborhood, but it's actually like technically on the edge of that neighborhood. So it's actually closer to a pretty unsafe neighborhood that I didn't want to be in. And so Airbnb was actually super helpful, and they refunded me that whole thing. And I was like, look, even if you type it in on the map, the neighborhood that comes up is not the neighborhood that is advertised in the listing. So make sure it's actually where you want to be. And then you're going to want to make sure you actually go through the house rules and any other additional info you will need to know. And for some of you, check-in might matter, because maybe you're on a late flight or what may have you, and there's not 24-hour check-in. Well, that's something that you should be aware of. Now, another thing that's going to probably be important to the single gentleman on my channel is you want to make sure these places are guest friendly. And obviously, I'm not going to get too deep into that, but if you want to bring people back to your Airbnb, you want to make sure that that is all kosher, because there are certain cities and places that are known for not allowing guests. Another thing you might want to be aware of is, what's the parking situation like? If you're going to be driving there, if you're going to be renting a car, you want to make sure that there is parking that is easily accessible. And some places around the world, they might charge you more for parking. They might charge you more for electricity, or it might depend on how much you're using the air conditioning or something like that. So be sure what the additional costs and fees may be outside of the listed price. Another thing I would recommend is actually reading some of those reviews, and you may want to check the most recent reviews, because some of these places might have construction happening presently, and that might be something you want to be aware of. Because oftentimes that won't be mentioned in the listing, especially if new construction just started, or their neighbor just started doing construction, or the restaurant around the corner, or what may have you. Because often if you're sorting by not the newest, some of those older ones that have glowing reviews aren't going to reference that. Whereas the newer ones might have a lower rating, and they might say, hey, there is some noise problems because of construction or a bar or what may have you. And so in general, if you do all these things, you're probably going to have a pretty decent Airbnb experience. And now that I think about it, I don't know if I mentioned this or not, but if internet is important to you, that is something else that you should have a consideration for. Same with like a workspace. And so all of these reasons are really why when I go to an Airbnb, I only get it for 1 to maybe 3 nights to test it out. Make sure it works for me. Make sure the internet speeds are good. And make sure in general it is as advertised, and there's not going to be any deal breakers such as noise at 3 a.m. or what may have you, or a club that's open until 5 a.m. and I can hear the music pounding all night. And so I know some people have had some rough experiences with Airbnb for various different reasons, and I really haven't had any negative experiences because I do all of those things. In fact, most of the places that I choose to check out for 1 to 3 nights end up being the place that I am generally interested in. And usually I end up staying in that place. But I know the taxes and fees, the cleaning fees, and then some places want you to be like cleaning up after yourself even though they're charging a cleaning fee. I know that can be a deal breaker for many of you. So hotels probably going to be your best option. But I've also found that booking.com in general has pretty good prices, certainly better than VRBO, Verba, in my personal experience. And many times the advertised price on booking.com, for instance, is actually the price you're going to pay, whereas Airbnb does some nifty little trickery, and then you end up seeing one price and then it's something completely different by the time you are actually checking out. But with that said, here are some tips to get better deals, especially on long-term stays. So especially with Airbnb, you can message the host directly and try and work out a deal with them. I used to do this quite frequently, especially when that whole worldwide thing went around a few years ago. And I was like, look, no one's traveling here. This place is going to be empty. So I just throw them a number and see if they bid. And many times they wouldn't. They'd be like, no, too low, can't do it, blah, blah, blah. And then I'd be like, okay, thanks anyway. And then they'd come back with a number that was actually something that I would be interested in. I'd be like, sure, great. And it would be like 50% off. Because many of you know Airbnb is way overpriced. Because it's furnished and because they're usually catering to tourists who have more money and so on and so forth. But another thing that I had started to do is I would go to a certain Airbnb and make sure that was the area I wanted to be in. And then I just put in the work on the ground and look for rent signs that were for rent monthly or even weekly. And oftentimes those places had even better deals than Airbnbs, for example. And this obviously is going to depend on the country for the most part, because if you're calling someone in Thailand, for example, and then they answer the phone in Thai, you're not going to know what to say. But if you have a local friend who speaks Thai, then you can have them call for you. In fact, I did this in places like Medellin. I did it in places like Mexico City, where I had women walking around with me calling these numbers to figure out what these places would cost to rent for a month, a week, and if they were furnished or not. And I got really, really good deals on really, really great places by doing it this way. So you can save yourself a ton of money by doing that. And obviously you're probably going to be more interested in putting that effort forward if you're planning on staying in place for 3 months or 6 months or what may have you, Whereas if you're doing it for a shorter period of time, it's probably not as important. Now, with all that said, that's going to wrap up this video. Thank you for watching. Let me know any other comments or advice that you would give in the comments down below so that we can help as many people as possible. Make sure to smash that like button if you haven't already. And I will see you guys in the next video. And as always, peace, much love.